Good morning. This is the final little bit of live streaming I'm going to be doing on the Twist application. So this is the the fourth episode. The last three episodes have been done over the last couple of weeks. And because I'm going to be starting working full-time again in February, on the 8th of February, I've got a couple of contracts that I'm doing. I'm not going to have any time to do streaming because that's just how life is. I need to work, earn money. Streaming does not yet pay the bills. I'm no ninja. So we're just going to do this last little bit of streaming. And I just noticed there's a little bit of cleanup from code that I was doing yesterday. This component thing doesn't need to be there. So we'll just remove that. And then this should be okay over here. Okay. So we've got that up. We've got the YouTube stuff over here in the other window. Hello chat people, I'll try and actually pay attention to the chat window today. Somebody asked a question last week if this was a passion project, I think the question was. And yeah, it's kind of like my own little project that I've built by myself. I started building it in 2010. So this is now the 11th year that I have been working on this application. And I've been kind of rebuilding it in many different frameworks. So I've been rebuilding it in Rails. That was the first initial version. It was Rails and Mongo, and then Rails and Postgres. Rebuilt that a couple of times, and then when I had my Elixir fixation a little, five or so years ago, I was trying to rebuild it in Elixir and found out Elixir didn't have the packages for parsing Markdown and ASCII doc that I wanted, so I came back to Ruby. And then I think 2 or 3 years ago, I started rebuilding this in its current incarnation, which is this front-end and back-end hybrid. And that kind of led me down the path of writing books like Exploding Rails and my guide like the one that I've called Bix. So that's the Dry RB. This one, the ROM and Dry Showcase. So I've got that one written now. And I want to kind of spread the news about this ROM and Dry stuff. And the way I can do that is through this application. So that's, I guess, the kind of background. If you were watching last week, this is, I guess, the answer to your question. If this is something I'm paid to do, or if it's something that's just a passion project of mine, it is indeed just a passion project of mine. Just like book writing, although book writing does actually earn me an income. So I guess this kind of is a way of, it helps make the books better because people read the books through this application, leave notes, and then the books get improved through that. So I guess it kind of does make money, but not as much as full-time jobs. I kind of like this house that I'm in now, so it'd be good to keep it around for a little bit longer. Anyway, last week we were looking at this invite a reader stuff. So my notes here that are on my phone at the moment, so you can't see them, but I can. What we're looking at doing is having, in fact, you know what, I can probably bring them up. Why not? Let's see here. Bop, and open in new window. All right. So this is what we're trying to do last week. And I'll open this one up in a new window as well. Pop that over there and make that bigger. Okay. So last week we were looking at select box should not contain the usernames of users who have already been invited. So what this means is that this one here, if I type radar, it shouldn't include radar. All right. And I type me2 in there, calcify me2 and twist fetcher. All of these users do exist in the database, but because they've already been invited, we don't want to re-invite them. The other thing is that when I can't actually show you this right now, but a readers list should reload automatically when an invite has been sent. So just to cover that off one more time, when we have this readers list, that's the code for it. This is the readers list over here. When we do the query to load this, we have a query here called readers. Now that query has a particular name for a very good reason, and that is because when we do the invite over here in the invite form, we use this Apollo setting called refetch queries. So when this invite user mutation runs, when I actually click this button and trigger the invite user mutation, it's going to redo that readers query and reload this list automatically for us, showing us not only this little invite, invite sent little thing down here, but it's also going to make the reader appear over here. So that's the invite sent message there. So that was a nice little thing that we added there. And the final thing that we were looking at was the readers list should be sorted alphabetically. And I kind of struggled a little bit with this, to be honest, because what I really wanted to do here is to have two ways of sorting readers. The first way I wanted it to be sorted was having authors at the top, and then if the people weren't authors, then you'd have an alphabetical list of readers underneath. And the way I've worked around that is by having two different things here. So we've got a list of authors and a list of readers. Now these two pieces of code are the same sort of things. So really what I should be doing is like defining a reader item sort of component, and then we do what do we have? It kind of just takes everything for a reader and an index too, so that's the kind of more difficult part. We have, you know what, let's put that up here, and it takes GitHub, it takes all this stuff. Hey, I've already got it, pretty much all that stuff, and an index. So what we're trying to do here, just to get this, okay, I just wanted to kind of remove this duplicated code. I've just noticed it here, so we'll just get rid of that duplicated code. Okay, so we want to then take this, put it in here, return that, okay, and then author suffix isn't defined. So I think that, because that's particular to this item, we want to render author and author suffix. So for each of these components, we want to render, the thing we want to return is, you know what, this actually tidies up this code quite a lot, because what this then becomes is just reader, and then we want to then do reader item. I can't call it reader because there's a constant already called, a type here already called reader, so I can't do that. So reader item here. And then I want to kind of splat all the reader stuff. So that's the splat, and then pass it an index as well. And that will get me the right things out. I'm missing a circle bracket right there. And that, because that's a number and a property, I need to do that. Reader item. All right. This all has implicit any type. So really this type reader item props is reader and an index, which is a number. So it's got all the same stuff as a reader, but it's also got this index thing on it. So that's the reader item props there. And the type of this thing is a React functional component, which does reader item props. Okay. All right. So what this is now doing is just taking out that kind of list item code and extracting it. And we've got to move this author suffix out of readers. Readers is kind of the parent component, which lists a bunch of different readers. And we don't really care for that here because it's more inner, it's more inside, it's more relevant to each of these reader items. So put a reader here and an index there. Okay, so now if we want to change this reader item list item at all, like if we wanted to change it so it's got like some sort of text here before each of the readers, we can do that. Just a way of removing that duplicated code a bit, which is nice and a little bit neat. Okay, so I'll make a little commit for that one. Today we'll be looking at, that's the app thing, so remove component from app.tsx because I'm not using it, and add reader item component to readers. Okay, that'll go up, and that'll go to GitHub, and then along to Vercel, which hosts Twistbooks. Automatically deploys the master branch, assuming tests are passing. Okie dokie. So we got readers. Now today, that's a history. That's what we're doing in the past. So that shouldn't be 1A. It should be shouldn't be 3A. It should be 1A. Okay. So today on the stream, what I want to look at doing is a couple of things. Last week I was talking about the unparlification of Twist. Now I suspect what can happen in the application is that a malicious user like a hacker could, any sort of hacker. What this invite a reader thing is doing here, I'll show you. my concern is that a user will be able to be books development not automatically, but programmatically invited to the application. Which one did that remove? Me too. So if I add me too here, in fact, what I want to show you is, oh, you know what? That's missing. Each of these should have a key of index. In fact, no, they shouldn't, because they should have IDs. But they don't have IDs. I'll get back to that key. This console area here. We'll come back to that in a moment. Saying each child on the list should have a unique key prop, and that's because I'm doing reader item here and not passing it a key. Later. So let's put that on our list to look at after this. Reader item needs a key property. Okay, that's on our list. So lists are great, aren't they? They're so helpful. I really love using lists. They're really good. So what we want to look at here is what the network request looks like. So invite a user, we're going to invite me to, and that's going to click this button, and then you know what, I'm going to trash all those. Click this button. Apparently it does like 5 GraphQL queries. Don't know why, but okay. But anyway, what this is doing is essentially it's sending this invite user request through, and it sends a mutation request, and then, you know, there's some invite user stuff that goes through. Now the headers that it sends through this authorization token, which tells us who the user is. Doesn't look like it's sending through. What I'm kind of looking for here is like an CSRF parameter, because if there wasn't something like that being passed through, then people could programmatically send requests, assuming they've got a bearer token here. And I don't think I'm doing anything with this bearer token. My point is here that I think any user, if they are skilled enough, could invite any other user to a book if they knew the book's permalink and if they knew the user's ID that they wanted to invite. Because they have, they know, or actually they need to know the book ID apparently. Oh, that's weird use of it. I thought it would be using permalink, but okay, it's using ID. I wrote this code and I still don't know how it works. That's fine. Invite user. So invite user here, I think is my point here is here that I think we have an authorization issue here where any user can send invitations, even though if we go back over here, and I'm stalling for time, if we set that to false, even though we hide invite here and we don't let users see the invite screen here, they can still do a GraphQL request if they're clever enough. And really, we should try and prevent that sort of thing from happening in Twist. So today, that is what I want to tackle. And that kind of leads us into the regular routine stuff, which is setting up a timer for 90 minutes and then going about tackling this troublesome, tricky little bit of problem here. YouTube's crying at me. Stream's current bitrate. Okay, well, that's just probably some sort of internet-y issue. We'll see about that. It should be okay. All right, let's set a timer for 90 minutes and we will tackle this stuff. That button, those, scroll, and hit the button. Okay. Again, should take us through until about 12:25 today. So I've got the suspicion that the invite user mutation is able to be actioned by any user through our application. And the way they do that is by making a request through our application to the server, and then from there, Twist dutifully follows the instruction of the user to invite anyone else to the application. Now, that's not ideal. What we should only allow is for authors to send that invitation. So where we would write, what we should do to test our assumptions is to write a test for it. We could test it ourselves and try and pretend like we're a hacker. You know, I could go and grab my black hoodie and put it on, and my sunglasses and my cap, and wear it all inside and be an elite hacker. But really, there's no point to doing that when we've got this perfectly good aspect tool right in front of us. Walking to the bedroom, coming back here would take me, nearly 45 seconds when aspect's right here already. So what I should do here is probably write another test. So let's have a look. When the user is not already invited, it sends this invitation. So this user here, I'm Radar, I'm inviting Ghost, I'm sending this mutation. This is the sort of stuff that we do. So when the inviter is an author, and I think make author, we did have we had this mutation that allows us, not mutation, sorry, transaction class that allows us to create a user as an author. So we're going to use that in this test today. We've got a couple already, so I will just take that one. This one is called permissions make author. Make author, and what I want to do here is before here, oops, I'll move that out of the way in the other window. Make author Radar. Okay. So when the inviter is an author, then we should be able to invite people. Just to clarify some wording around here, when the invitee is not already invited, when the invitee, just to clarify, like there's kind of the relationship here between inviters and invitees, not users and users. You can't use the same word to talk about two different things. We talked about that, I think, in episode 2, where it's important to have the same name for the same thing. Otherwise, you're talking about things in cross purposes. In this case, we want different names for essentially the same object because they have different roles in the relationship of the action that's happening here. One is the inviter, and the other one is the invitee, the person being invited. Invitee, I don't even know if invitee is a word. Is it a word? Invitee. Look at that, it is. Inviter, yep, inviter, yeah, okay, look at that. I thought it wasn't, okay. Shows you how many parties I have. So let's look. So when the inviter is an author, we should do this. Okay. Context, when the inviter is not an author. So it's like the opposite of that association. Really, the user, when the invitee is not already invited, it does not invite a user. So what we're trying to do here, see this mutation data, like, okay, so we got a couple of problems here. One, we want to make sure that the database doesn't get populated with the like that permissions table. That's not right. Postico. Connect. Permissions table over here. This permissions table should not get populated when the inviter is not an author. That's number one. The number two thing is that we're going to have like some way of returning some data here if they're not. Like the data that gets returned here has a book ID and user ID, but probably only if there's a permission object being returned. So there's kind of two things we should care about here. And really the same concern happens here and here. Like we're not actually making sure with these tests that data actually gets created in the database. So permissions. What do we have on the permission repo accessible to us? Find by book ID and user ID. Perfect. Yes, that is great. Let's do that. So let permission repo is twist container transactions. Now with all this stuff, I reckon I could do an include here like I'm doing in the other tests, but in other places. I just thought about that. So repositories permission repo. Instead of all this silly let permission repo stuff going on. Anyway, I will put that down to twist import into tests instead of writing let Ryan's homework. There you go. I've got homework. I'm a teacher. I get to set homework for myself. So that's complaining because it's missing a comma. That's complaining because it's missing a comma. What we want to do with this permission repo thingo is we want to say expect let permission record. Yeah, permission record. Permission repo find by book ID and user ID. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to say book ID and user ID. What we want to do with that one, just going to open that back up over there, move that over there on that screen. What we're trying to do with this one here is we're just trying to see if a permission record exists. So in this case, like it should exist here. Expect permission record not to be nil, right? And then definitely down here it should exist. Oh, actually, no. That one's the test where it does not invite a user. So to be nil, we expect the permission record there to be nil. And in this one, we expect it not to be nil because the user has already been invited. And this one's like the invite's already been invited, but it's not showing an error. Like it does nothing at all. Like it's just the user has already been invited. So yeah, cool. You're like, you know, like when you're talking with your partner, like we should invite Molly Mabel, my cat, to the party. Oh, but I already invited the cat to the party. Oh, that's great. Hello, Molly Mabel. So we've got a guest streamer on today. We've got this cat who is a very anxiety-riddled cat. But she's lovely when she's not being anxious. She's very big too. Okay. So Molly, Mabel, and I are going to do some pair programming. That's good. Yes, she has two names, Molly and Mabel. Because she's that good of a cat. She deserves two names. She is now climbing behind everything in the desk. So she will do that for a little bit and hopefully step on the keyboard. I'll try to keep her off the keyboard, keep her tail out of her face. Come here, bub. Oh, and this one, I should have closed the door to keep you out, huh? All right. So what we're looking for there, this user ID is not, in fact, that should be Ghost, right? That's the user that we're looking for. Hello. Hello, Molly Mabel. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, so permission, when we're making an author here, I think what we're looking for is the make an author actually takes two arguments. It takes the book ID, which is book ID, and takes the user ID. It was saying make this user an author on a particular book, not make this user an author across the entire system. So radar.id. The cat has now just flopped right in the middle of my keyboards and is now purring very loudly. You're a good girl. Yeah, big sook. Okay, so what we have done here is we validated that there is indeed a user record being created. So 61, we're expecting nothing to happen if the inviter is not an author, but something does happen. So we have confirmed our suspicions. Sorry, kitty cat. I'm gonna have to take you out. You're being too trouble. Go outside, please. Okay. Oh, such a funny little cat. She'll have lots of cuddles after this. Don't worry about that. Okay, so we've confirmed that the permission record's been created, but really the user should not be allowed to create that. Like they shouldn't be able to do this invite user mutation. So invite user is the mutation there. Why? The mutation is just called invite. Invitations invite. Yeah, okay. So this is the kind of transaction here which is going to go ahead and invite this user, but really it's not going to. It shouldn't be successful because the current user that is used here is not they're not an author. So we've got the book ID, we've got the current user, and with those bits of information, we can check through the permission repo if they are allowed to access that. I don't know if we have anything on transactions for accessing if a user is allowed to do certain actions. Transactions, permissions, make author. Like, what I'm kind of thinking here is like accessing the permission repo and doing the sort of author check. Later on, we're going to need to do the same thing with notes. So rather than accessing permission repo all the time and asking, is this user an author? What we could do here is we could say check author RB, and we can say, well, we've kind of got pretty much the same code here. Check author and check author book ID, that sort of thing. And later on, when we need to do that check, we have a check author call, and then we can do something depending on based on that author call there, without having to reach down into the permission repo. Kind of hesitant to reach down into any of these repository methods. I feel like the thing that should get exposed to the application are the transaction classes, and they should be agnostic to any underlying changes in the repo. Like there should be a separation here in repo between how the data is gathered up and then how that API is presented through to the application. I think the transactions do that job for us here. So what we want to include here is the kind of same thing we include over in the controllers, where we import this stuff here. So we're doing transactions, permissions, check author. Okay. This will now import a method called check author. So if I do binding.pry here, or I feel like I might need to require pry here first. And we'll run just that one spec. Okay, so now we're just targeting that one spec now. So we should have a check author method, which we do. And if I do check author book ID and user ID, I got false. So this author is not permitted to access it. Now I think the mutation is probably the one layer above where I want to actually add this code. So the transaction here is probably a better idea to add that in. So I'll move it into that. So invitations, this one here. This is already doing a permission repo check. And it's trying to find or create by book ID and user ID, you know. I kind of vacillate on this stuff, don't I, a little bit? I think that's the word I'm looking for. So this is still reaching down into repositories. So that kind of goes against what I was saying before, where we should only expose things through the transaction. Yeah, so I reckon we can add that to our list as well, but I don't think that'll actually do much. So like won't be too interesting for the stream. So remove permission repo dependency on invitations invite. All right, I can remember to do that later. So this transaction here is doing find or create by book ID and user ID, and then it'll try and create it. What it's not doing is it's not checking to see if the current author, the current user here, it's not doing anything with this current user variable, right? We want to do something with that. So let's say like if check author book ID, user ID, and remember it's not the user that we're inviting. It's the current user's ID. So current user ID. And now if that user is an author, then we want to return success. Otherwise, in fact, you know what we can do is we can do unless here. Unless is good for shortcutting it. So unless that is true, and we want to return failure and something here like a permission error. Bad user, no biscuit. Something, I don't know. Something that indicates, you know, nah, we tried, but you're not allowed to do that. Sorry, you're not a cool author. All right, so what we're trying to return here, we cannot return null for non-nullable field mutations invite users. So the mutation here is trying to get back a success, but the success is not going to work because it's a what we're returning there is actually a failure instead. Okay, so this, if I try and do this call here, it should return nil because it's not a success. You see, when I call the function, it's now returning this failure thing instead. So what I want to do is something similar to the union that I had before for, I don't think we've seen it before, this authorization stuff, which is like, is the user authorized to access the book? Yes or no, they are not. Where that lives, I believe, is in Twist Web, GraphQL, and trying to remember where I put it. It's not. Objects book. Well, I know on the query type, it returns the type that I'm looking for, which is this book permission check result. There it is. So if the object that gets returned here is indeed a book, twist book, then we return book type. Otherwise, we return permission denied type. That's the kind of thing that we want to do. Where is that? That's permission check result, so it's there. So this other one should probably be inside of that mutations directory, inside of here. What we'll do is we'll call this one invite permission check results. Invite permission results.rb. Invite permission check. Invite permission result. So the result from attempting an invite. The possible types here that we're going to return are the invite type, I believe, and the permission denied type. I'm just not sure. Resolve type. How does permission check result get used? Okay, so it gets resolved like that, and then book is the query type. So book is then it's then calling the book function, or it's calling something to get that out. Okay, so that's fine. Invite permission check result. Fine. So the type that should be returned from that invite mutation over here is this invite permission result. And then how that gets resolved is this thing, which is neither success or fail. And so this is now going to return an object that's either what it looks like is it's either a success that contains a book ID, user ID, or one of these. It's that, or it's failure, bad user, no biscuit, something like that. And then depending on that, we can then determine what to actually return from that permission check result. I think that's how this is supposed to work. Let's close a bunch of that stuff. We can close that and that and that and that and that and that and that. Invite this thing. So the object that gets returned here is now going to be got to require it probably. Invite permission results. So yep. Relative invite permission result. In fact, you know what? That should probably be. That should probably be under the invitations. Namespace there, and that will still be okay. Invite type won't be able to be found. That's strange. I would think that invite type would be found in that invite permission result. So what was it before? It was invite type, right? Invitation type. Invitation type and permission denied type. There's the permission denied type. require see. Whoa, that's a lot of permission denied. That's the database dump. Not ideal. Permission denied type, like that should be being defined there. The constant. Permission denied type. Okay, so what we're trying to do is get the access to this permission denied type there. That should be being automatically loaded because it's at the right, it's at the same path. But it might not be loaded because mutations are loaded before queries. So queries and objects. So mutations are yeah, that's really bad. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be cheeky. Do this. Okay, this is now saying invite, so the invite permission result cannot be found. So the type is that should be mutations, module mutations, I think. It's not quite the right shape. So module mutations, module that. Okay, Ruby man. Do what I mean. Selections cannot be made directly on unions. So now this is saying that the query that we're trying to do, so the invite user query, the request one, this one, is the thing that we're returning is no longer on invitation type, on invitation. It should be return book ID and user. And on permission denied, get back an error. So what I was trying to do before is find the fields on the invite user mutation, but because the invite user returns a union, we don't have access to those fields unless we specify what type we're expecting. So it's like, hey, GraphQL, if you get back this invitation, when you do this invite user call and you get back an invitation, I want book ID and user ID from that. If when you do that query, you get back a permission denied thing, okay, forget about book ID and user ID. Instead, I just want to know the error. So this is what we get back now. So we get back this failure object here, which looks like it. So if object failure, we return the type that we want is permission denied type. Otherwise, we want invitation type. And that just tells GraphQL, okay, we want to resolve it using this stuff, these classes here. So that should be okay now. And because we're good programmers, we always use the positive in the if statements first. So we want to use invitation type up front there. Okie dokie. And I'm going to remove backtrace there. Okay, we've got a couple of issues here. Like the thing that we're getting back out of the mutation isn't appearing to be the right shape of data. So let's jump back to invite user spec again over here, and let's just tackle this one thing at a time. So what I'm just run is that first test 54. So this one, we're saying the book ID and user ID should be equal to that. Well, the data that gets back now is definitely not that. It's the data that gets back should be that permission denied shape. So invite user should be an error. You do not have permission to access that book. Yeah, there we go. So expect invite user error to equal you do not have permission to access that book. Okay, and so now when the user tries to do the mutation, they should see the error, and then that should work. Okay. The other failures in this file were this one, we're just expecting the invitation, it looks like, to succeed. This one here. So that's 76. So you can do colon 76 to run that test. invite user, which we get back, oh, apparently don't have permission to access that book. I think that's a load of crap, because this user definitely should. Alright, let's have a look at the mutation again. So we can go back to the mutation. It's trying to do this transaction thing here. Invitations, invites, this one, and this is what we want. So this should call the transaction here, and we get this. So they're not an author. Current user is correct, and I made them an author of that book through this call. I don't know if our test database will actually have anything, but I'm going to try and look at it. I don't think it will, because everything runs inside a transaction. So what we can do instead is we can do permission repo. I think I still have access to permission repo here. So really what I want to do is this call here. Book ID, user ID, user ID. Okay, so there is like this association setup. So I mean, they have access to the book, but they aren't. Create user radar, like that's just creating a user, is not creating any association. This make author thing I'm highly suspicious of now. I feel like it's not actually applying the author update. Permission repo. Make author for book and user update author true. Well, look, that seems highly cromulent to me. Permission repo make author book ID. Book ID, user ID, user ID. 1. Author true. Huh? Make author should be okay. Make author here. It's gonna move that test, but yeah. I have access to the permission repo here, but I don't have access to book ID and radar ID. Author false. Well. That's right after this make author call. You seeing that? Book is eagerly evaluated. Radar is eagerly evaluated. So what is going on? I feel like it's delayed somehow, you know? Like 0. So zero records are being updated at that point in time. So make author for book and user. So oh, you know what? This is only finding, yeah, okay. Oh, make author here doesn't make a user an author if they don't already have access to it. So really the grant permission step, the invite. You actually need to invite a user, make a, you know what. We're testing the permission stuff, but we also need to invitations. Okay. Invitations invite. So we're going to invite this user and then we're going to make them an author. I really should do that in one step, but invite book ID, user ID, radar ID. I don't know, that just seems so ugly. Like, I feel like I should just be able to call make author and then that will work. Like permission repo, make author should, yeah, this is for book and user. So that should really be like, it's going to do 2 queries. I wonder if there is like an upsert. I don't know. All right. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do invite. So we're going to invite, and then we're going to make the user an author, and then they should be okay. So let's give it another shot, hey? Book ID, user ID. Yep. Okay, and 76 is now 78 or 79. This is the first invite, so the first invite is fine. This is the first invite. Huh. Okay. Yeah, no. So this is now, yeah, not going to work because we need to check for current user. Invite here has no concept of a current user. We don't know who's doing the invite. So I'm just going to take a break for a sec. And then when I come back, we'll look at making make author behave itself. And we are back again. Hello again. Alright, so we're trying to do this inviter is an author thing, but we ran into an issue with make author. Now make author is doing this thing called make author, which attempts to find for the book and user. It does this update statement, but really it should be doing probably two queries. It should be trying to like find it and then create it. So what I will try and do here is just do book ID and just do it cheap. I'm agonizing over this because it's doing two queries. It's doing this find query and it's doing basically what it counts to. Yeah, there really should be like sort of an upsert, I'm guessing, but like a try and update this thing, but if it doesn't exist, insert it. That's what upsert. You know what? Is there an upsert? Let's have a look. Oh, this one's going to fail because it's now checking for the invite is now checking for the current user. Current user is blank. All right, so what I want to do here is like, well, that's now obviously going to work, but upset, is there an upset? Okay, author, true. What does that method actually do? Like, is that the answer to my problems? Probably. Let's have a look. Upset. And we'll find out where. To find out where methods are defined in Ruby, you can use method and then source location like that, and you can get access to the method. I just clicked command clicked on that, and it's taken me to this. So update tuples in the relationship. So upsert is here. Uses internal SQL implementation. Example, uses upsert. So where this stuff, target, email, update name, excluded name. That sounds ugly. You know what? I'm going to just do the to query part because, yeah, that makes more sense to me. For now. So making the user an author in that case, and the test we want to run is now 77. You know what? That line number keeps changing all the time. I'm going to show you one more trick. So we have the inviter is an author. So -e is like the name of the spec, and then -e. So even if these lines were to change, it would still run the same test, or the same set of tests, I guess, in this case. So it's still, yeah, it still looks to be failing in this particular case. That's okay. What we'll try and do here, invite user here has already got this book ID and user ID passed through. I'm trying to fix up that one first because we're kind of running into the same problem before where this is now going to be requiring when we do this invite user thing. Oh man, I'm importing it twice, I think. Yes, I am. Invite. Okay. Yeah. So this invite function here, current user, this takes a current user argument. I don't know if I can just pass that through here. I think because that's the call method. It comes a little bit later on. Like when I'm importing it like this, how do I specify custom argument? Try auto inject, I think was the sort of yeah, I think this is what I want. I know there's many gems. Usual documentation. Thank you. Container, basic usage. I mean, that's how you can import a know what, this is probably one of those classic cases where I'm just doing it wrong, and like current user should be passed through down here. Like then you get rid of initialize here and then you just pass the current user here. So that is probably going to break a bunch of different things, but it means that I don't need to define another initialize method there and do hacky things with it. So let's look at where we're calling invite. Current user is radar.id. And I will, this one is called does nothing. Excuse me. Okay, the I don't need to pass radar ID, I just need to pass radar because I'm trying to call ID on radar, which is already good. Okay, this is the invite mutation, which is now doing this invite passing in current user, but current user is no longer a, that's where it's used. Okay, that's where current user was previously used. So invite inside a mutation, current user is passed in here, which is wrong now. According to our implementation, it should be passed to current user, current user. Okay. We're good, I think. And first put a comment on that line, stop Robocop complaining. Oh, context current user, right? Like that. Good. All right. Getting there, I think. What we're expecting this thing to be returning is a book ID, and when the inviter is an author, this should be returning a book ID. I'm going to make that a bit smaller again. Book ID and user ID, but it's not returning anything. Why? Yes, I do. I'm an author. Context ends there. When the inviter is an author. Does this make author being a jerk again? Probably. Invitations, invite. Make sure I'm getting that right user there. Yeah. And this is what's failing here. Yeah. Even though I'm making the author here. Okay, so find or create by book. Yep. You know what? This should be update. That is upset. Before, when we were looking at it, looked like it took some different arguments. Update is the right. That should be the right shape of arguments. Great. Okay. So the object that's being returned here, invitation, book ID, invite. Yeah, okay. The object that's now being returned from this particular query is this success object. It's a success of twist permission book. So what we want to do with it is like a map on it, and if it's a, I think that's what Dry Monads calls it. If it's a success object, do this thing, otherwise it's do another thing, or a Ruby 2.7 case statement on, I guess. So we're going to resolve an object, and then we want to return invitation type. So invitation type, I feel bad if we have to do a success thing there, because it's not a success. It's going to be nil. Is that the object that I want? No. Very interesting. So invite, and then I can get rid of that binding to pry now that we've got working, mostly working. It's like when we're returning this invitation type, we want to kind of unwrap it here in the union type. So yeah. Yeah, maybe it's a like don't know what that object is, right? So it's result is a success. And if it's success, then we just want to return the object itself. So the result success out of that. That's kind of the object we want to return. So we do result success there. And that should be okay. No, that'll break the permission resolver earlier. I think. Map. Trying to think here of what we do, like you know what, maybe it's just like this case we get back book ID and we want to do like an object success book ID, and then we want to get back user ID as object success user ID. That should unwrap it both ways. I hate it, it's just so ugly. Invite user gets to that binding to prior, gets us to the right point. Okay, I will leave that as a note to myself later on to look at. That spec should be okay now. All right, we'll try again. Okay, invite user is now making sure the when the inviter is not an author, then they can't send those queries to us. So not all users, only users should be able to do that. And we did that one too. So that is a check there and a check there. All right. So what? Let's just spend a moment reviewing what we've done there. So when this when we do a query to invite a user, there are two potential ways this can now go. It either succeeds and returns an invitation, or it gets a permission denied error. The way this works is through the transaction here. You know what? We'll just do that. Invite call. So what I'm trying to do here is set up this new invitations object with a certain permission repository on it. The invite is the transaction to invite the user. We say who the inviter is. You know what? Let's just use the same logic everywhere. Hey, invite. Inviter. Okay. The inviter is the current user, the book we're inviting them to, and the user ID. The user ID, I feel like changing the argument is superfluous at the moment. It'll take a little bit of time. So now if a hacker was to come along and try and do a GraphQL mutation, they wouldn't be able to succeed because we are blocking that from happening unless the user is an author. So just add a bunch of stuff. Everything here, libtwist transactions, permissions check author, and libtwist web. That's the other one. And I'm going to remove, because I've done this before, I've committed the entire repository before, the entire SQL accidentally before, and almost pushed it up. Didn't go through, not like it's got anything secret in it, just like basically all the books I've written. Not in a format that you could read, but unless you have the app. Oh wait, you do. It's open source. Of course you have the app. Only allow for authors to perform invite user mutations. Okie dokie. Done. Beautiful. All right. I'm still a bit unhappy with this code here where we have to do success to get out the object, but I feel like it's something I could look at a little bit later on. Oh, I just got to stretch. Okay. Okay, so we've got an invitation there. That's all good and happy. Now, the next item on our list was a reader item needs a key property. So let's look at that. That sounds relatively straightforward. I keep saying like things should be relatively straightforward, and then they turn out not to be. Whoops, not that one, this one, books development and permissions. What I need to do here is toggle this user back to being a author, and then ta-da! When we load this page, we get this permissions issue here. The readers don't have a key property. That is happening over on readers.tsx when we're doing this reader item thing, and we need to specify a key item here. Now, surely you could do key index, but the index, the important thing to notice about index is that they always change. If an item in the list changes, let's say we delete this one here, so that the indexes here are 0 and 1, and we delete the top item here, 0 goes away, but then this one becomes 0. And what React will do is that this one, any state that applied to this one, will now apply to this one, which is not ideal. And that has caused so many different problems and so many different headaches for people for time immemorial because they use an array index. What they should be doing is using a unique index per, unique key per component. So using key index as a key is generally not widely considered to be a good idea. What we want to do here instead is, instead of that, we want to do a reader ID for each of these items. And I can't believe that it's allowing that. I didn't think we were including ID in the query, but looks like we are. Okay, well, there you go. That's easy. That's so good. That's how coding should be. Good. Okay, add missing key prop to reader item. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. That is excellent. That was easy. Nope. Oh, man. PostCode. When I get my job, I promise I will buy a licensed copy of PostCode when I get paid again. All right. The final thing we will look at today, and I believe we still have 35 minutes left to do, is to add a way to remove readers from a book. So we have this list of readers on our application. We can add to it, but we can't actually remove anything. So the final thing I'm going to do is to add a way to remove those users. What we could do here is probably like I'm using this FA stack stuff at the moment. So font awesome icon, FA comment. Look at this. There's already stuff here. I kind of want to include this. So what I'm trying to do is add like an X to the FA comment. What I want to do is to add a little, like a red X next to, wow, that's very big. You know what is probably FA cross, FA times circle, FA times circle, and I'm going to make that a little bit smaller again over there. Yeah, that's looking good. Except it's really big. Doesn't need to be that big. And that's much better size. And it needs a little bit of padding there. NBSP or what am I doing? Quotes. Okay, so now it's far enough away. So, and it really shouldn't be blue. It should be red instead. The color, I don't really know if I have a red here. Style.css. I can't really import any of these colors. That's kind of one of the downsides I'm finding with Tailwind, is like I want to import a color, but I don't think it's available on the root. Like, I'm sure there was used to be a way of seeing like all the root stuff that's defined by it. It's not here. Import Tailwind colors into JavaScript, I guess. Referencing in JavaScript, okay. So apparently you can do it. There you go. Resolve config. Pull in a lot of our build time dependencies. Tool like Static version, okay. Yeah, I am going to go with the lazy bones option, which is to find a red that we're using somewhere else in the application. Ta-da, and grab one of those and use that instead. This is what people may refer to as founder code, and it's like the founders got too lazy when they were developing this application and just decided to write whatever code and like, why is this color hard-coded here? This is the only place to use this red. Like that importing colors, customizing colors, no. It was under configuration. Important, no. Referencing in JavaScript. I feel like... Alright, you know what? I'll give this a shot. Why not? Well, it's already broken. I just want a button that's red. Oh, you know what? We probably could just style it using CSS instead. What we can do there is just put a class name on it. Right? And we just say like delete. And that should have a class name on it. There. I think. Now there's a couple of places we're doing style. So there's this like chapter big file here, and then there's this tailwind CSS file which has a bunch of custom styles in it. Really, this delete button is like so localized. This button red. You know what? Button red is probably the class that I probably want for that. So let's stop being. What about button red? Hey, it works. Okay, and then you hover it and it doesn't change color. Good, because the other buttons do. So button red is fine. All right. So when we click this icon, we want to have like a little, is there like a size, size? Oh, all the options, 2 times. Too big. One times. 1 time should be enough. We click the button and then it will delete the user. So unclick, delete reader, and then that should then do something to delete the reader. So const delete reader. We have all the information we need to do it here. Now we have, we have the ID of the reader, which we have access to there, but we're not using. Found out we have access to it. Is this the right place to call the mutation? Yes. My concern here is that we'll need to refetch the reader's query too. All right. What we want to do here is like something like use delete reader mutation, and the variables are reader ID. This code, by the way, doesn't exist yet. Book ID. The delete reader mutation doesn't exist yet because we need to write it in the back end. So book ID. I'm just trying to puzzle through the correct steps here. So use delete reader mutation doesn't. It's called in the function delete reader. There's neither a React function component nor a custom React hook function. Okay. Use delete reader. Use delete reader. Cool. Can I find the name? So what we want to do is create a quick mutation that'll let us delete, like remove. You know what? This is the naming thing. This is the use remove reader. Delete is kind of like a database operation, isn't it? Use remove reader mutation. Okay, so we'll create a new mutation here. That's requests. I kind of want to create it one where we can stub stuff out for now. I think we'll be fine. Invite user. This, just take this. delete, remove reader spec RB. All right. What we'll do here is remove a reader with a mutation. We have permission repo. That's the one we want to do. When the permission does not exist, it does nothing, and the mutation is remove reader. This looks like it's the same query repeated twice. Let query do repeated twice. Remove reader. Okay, so assuming we're able to get book ID and user ID information out, and then it should do the right query. Remove reader, and this will get us back out that information. And ooh, I reckon we'll need to write a request spec for this because we do want to make sure that the data does actually go away in the end. But let's make sure that we get this working first. So when the permission does not exist, when the permission exists, it removes a reader. And then we don't need to write the query. What we do need is this should remove, so it should receive that. When it receives it, it gets, oh, I've got the permission here anyway. When a permission does not, no, it shouldn't receive final create by book here. It should receive remove with book ID book 1 user ID 2. That's probably it. And permission repo can then handle it. You know what? I don't understand. You don't really need it, so you don't really need that. Like, checking if the permission does or doesn't exist isn't relevant for this test because the permission repo just handles it via the remove method. Either it finds it or it doesn't find it. It finds a record to remove or it doesn't find a record to remove. Permission repo should receive remove with this. Now, I'm remembering, I just remembered we have a reader repo which should probably handle this thing instead. So, reader repo. Reader repo. Double permission. I don't believe we're using that permission thing anymore. And reader repo to receive remove with book ID and user ID. Removes a reader and returns the pair. The remove reader pair. Okay. Let's run the test. So we've got spec reader spec. Okay. The reader repo does not contain the method to remove. So what we want to do here is it gets book ID and it gets a user ID and does a where with book ID set to book ID and user ID set to user ID. Oh, my kingdom for destructuring. And then it does a delete. I believe it's a delete. Hopefully it's a delete. But we want to find any association between book ID and user ID and remove them, and then it should be okay. We do want to make sure that this is going through successfully, so that would make a lot of sense. Oh, you know what? This is using the old school method instead of the GraphQL helpers that we built last week. This is using the old school run query. That's right. Let's do that. So we've got query, and we've got variables, which are this stuff here. Reason I want to use the other helper is because it's kind of masking an issue that we're having at the moment where the delete reader query or remove reader query does not exist. And if we were to run binding.pry, we would see that, but we're not running binding.pry. So what we'll do here is we'll do GraphQL true, rerun the test, and we'll give it another shot. There you go. Field remove reader does not exist on the type mutations. So now we can add it. We'll go field remove reader mutations readers. See, I don't like that these are called this. They're kind of operating the same table, but they're called different things. Yeah, I don't know. Yay, double standards, hey. Okay. So we got this mutations readers things, this invitations thing here, which is this. This is a file that exists in readers. And this one's thing called remove. In fact, it's basically this. Remove RB. So we've then got remove and readers, and we're going to run into the same sort of problem here. Like this thing needs to return, like it needs to do that check. Yeah, so remove reader here should only be, remove reader shouldn't really action anything if the user is not an author. Only an author should be able to remove readers. So we got this resolve thing, which is doing invite, so remove readers, remove, and we want to remove remover. That I removed the type argument from that, I believe, accidentally. And now it kind of feels like I'm doing this the wrong way. If I keep having to create new types for this, maybe there's like a way of like raise a GraphQL exception, or I don't know. The union types are easy because on the front end you can rescue from particular types, and I just realized we're not doing that at the moment, so we'll need to do that for the invite a user one. All right, we'll do this just here. Mutations readers. Mutation type. Need to require it. Invert permission results. So for now, I'm just going to ignore that invitation type. Okay. Twist transactions readers. So this is the transactions directory. Doesn't have this transactions readers remove RB. Twist module transactions module readers module remove inherit from transaction class remove inherit from transaction. Couple of ends. The way to remove a user is through, you have the remover, you have a user ID, well, you have a book ID, and you have a user ID. Then you ask the permission repo, or the reader repo. You know what? I did permission repo here, didn't I? Should be reader repo in both of those cases. You ask the reader repo to remove book ID and user ID, and then you have a happy holiday. Oh, so close. Okay, that should be cool. And that should be include twist import repositories repo. Just so we're going to include it, that allows for the reader repo to be injected through dependency injection, and then it also will automatically import it if it's not passed in. Okay, the remove reader spec. This one is failing because the arguments it's getting are not the right shape. It is in fact getting book ID with that and user ID with that as strings. Cannot return null for that. So I believe it's returning nothingness. Like return null for non-nullable field mutations remove reader. On the mutation itself, in the mutation type we specified, we haven't specified anything, but removing is really like, yeah, okay, we acknowledge your request and yeah, we're going to remove those people. So what does remove return? Remove should return, I don't know, delete. Does delete return anything? Nah, it doesn't. Okay. For now, I'll just return a book ID and a user ID type here. A little hash, because GraphQL will still pull those out and treat them as if they were like the right type for now. Oh, they need to be a success. Oh dear. Because invitation type is an object that expects success or failure. Yawning, so I must need to have lunch soon. You know what, I'm going to see if I can specify null on that. Although, yeah, because we don't do anything with this data, really. We just want to make sure that it's successful. Let's come back to the test here for a moment, and we'll double check what that's doing. Oh, it's actually going to run the query as I'm asking it to. The mutation type. Remove reader here. Just not sure what can it return field for non-nullable field? Remove payload must define at least one field. Zero defined, okay. Mutation payload. This is kind of a better shape, I think. It's like it's returning the comment or it's returning errors. I like that shape much better than the custom union types. That looks pretty good, actually. I'm really enjoying that. Okay. And then there's mutation errors, so... And to add error types, okay, so this is then returning... Yeah, okay, so it's the same sort of stuff. Cool. Okay, well that answers that question about how we're going to handle an error in the case like if a user isn't an author. We want to handle this slightly differently. Still, the type that needs to be returned here, like what is that type? I wonder if I can just specify fields. Like, field ID string ID null false. I think I can. Yeah, okay. Field user ID null false. Yay, good. So now this is now returning, okay, so if I do book ID, and user ID, then we should all be good, I think. Or result dig, okay. Result. I think that should be result. Yeah, so then we get back the data that we want to return there. Cool. Okay, so we've got 13 minutes left on our timer. In the interest of time, I just want to get that use reader mutation, remove reader mutation hooked up. I'll do the permission stuff myself a little bit later on. What we need to do now is that we've added in that mutation, that spec. So reader spec RB wouldn't be a Ryan screencast if it didn't go over time. I guess we kind of want to verify that it does actually remove the reader. We can verify that ourselves. Yeah, okay. Schema dump. This then exports the schema, and then in the front end, you want to import it. So yarn GQL code gen. This will then import the schema code for us. And okay, I thought this might happen. So invite form, I'll come back to the readers stuff for a moment, but invite form, this is what I was talking about before, where we were like, the query up here, the mutation no longer returns just book ID and user ID. It returns either an invitation or it returns the correct data. So what we want to do in that case is the same thing we did in the spec invite user spec here, where we want to either do this thing or that thing. So we kind of either want to do that or that. Okay, happy times. So now this mutation here matches what our backend is defining it as. You don't get that sort of assurance from a JSON API. That API change is now reflected on the front end, and the front end is now verifying that that is correct indeed too. Okay, this file is that's invite form and readers. It's quite long. But use remove reader mutation, that's the one that I care about. So remove reader mutation. Or use remove. Huh? We are doing that sort of thing. I thought for invite form, at least, where use invite user mutation. So where's my use remove reader mutation? Not there. Use remove. Oh, you know what? I haven't defined a query for it yet. What you need to do is you need to define when you want CodeGen to actually generate you stuff you want. I definitely do need some lunch soon. Get some in a second. Just want to get this up and operational. Is just write this mutation here in line. Pretty will handle it. Now remove reader is a query that we're using. CodeGen will see that we want to use it and will generate us a function for that purpose. So use remove reader mutation. There it is. All right. So we've got it there, and it should be available here, and we are now passing it the right arguments. It doesn't take reader ID, it takes user ID as that, and a book ID with a book ID. Now this reader item doesn't take book ID yet. So the where book ID comes from, does this has a book permalink on the readers thing, wrapped readers. Doesn't pass it down to the readers component. I almost feel like that query, like this remove a reader query, should probably be like way down here. Like way down here. What's that name? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Use remove reader. Okay, so then you have access to, like, oh, actually no, it should probably be in here. Yeah. Then you would have access to the book permalink. We don't have access to the, oh, we do have access to the book ID there because we've got data book. Yay! Data book ID. Okay. What I'm trying to do with this action is move all that code all into, like, all the code that talks to GraphQL all into the one spot. So this is now an ID type, which is the, I believe this exports a type called ID. No? Oh yeah, it does. Scalars ID. There it is. ID. Scalars. Weird, I thought I was definitely using that somewhere else before. Anyway, that exports a bunch of scalars, so that's going to take a GraphQL thing. Book ID. The data that we're fetching for that does not contain a book ID, but we can get that information out very easily. And that was now going to verify that that is now working correctly. All right, come on. It's not an any. Get lost. Data book is reader's query, and it returns this book object, which is a type named book, and then that contains an ID on it. So stop complaining, it does have an ID. All right. Use, we'll call this remove reader, and that is use remove reader. Now, readers here is our readers component here, which takes readers props. In fact, let's shuffle that down here. I kind of want it in order, a little bit like in order. I'll go back, come on, remove reader. So readers props here takes a list of readers, and it now takes this remove reader function. And remove reader takes an ID, which is that scalars ID type, and returns void. Okay, and that's capital ID. So remove reader then needs to get passed to these things here. Remove reader, and here, remove reader. Now this way our readers components don't know anything about GraphQL. They just know, like, hey, I've got this function, takes an argument, cool. It doesn't mind where it comes from. Remove reader is this function remove. You know what? I'm going to need to define a type again. Remove reader. Make the type all consistent all the way down. So remove reader is remove reader type. Then we got remove. Ooh, actually, this. Use. Oh man. That remove reader needs to be called like use remove reader. Okay, and I want to call that use remove reader because this is getting no arguments, but we do have the use remove reader. We have the ID there, and that should all now match up. Oh, this needs to be called use remove. You can tell I'm getting a little tired, hey? Remove reader. I will need to go back and rename that stuff later on. We want remove reader here. Remove reader. All right. I can't believe that's still complaining on TSC. It definitely should not be complaining. Oh, okay, because... but I'm already checking for permission denied up there. Okay, another one to come back to a little bit later on. So remove reader then does this user remove reader stuff, which then takes some variables and should actually remove a reader. So let's get to the end of that. In fact, this is now going to be proper complaining. Book here is what this is complaining about here is that book is either a book or it's a permission like as book. Reader's query book. I know that when this code's called that it's always going to be a reader's query book, so that should now be okay. When I click this thing, it should do a an invalid hook. Cool. Probably this. We saw this sort of thing a couple of episodes ago where we were calling a function that wasn't a React hook. It's outside of the context. The reason for that was we were using a non-lazy query when we should have been using a proper query. So use remove reader mutation. Is there a lazy version of it? No, only the one type it looks like. Okay. Const remove reader mutation. That's what I'm not doing. I'm not doing this sort of setting. Okay. Const remove reader. And it takes a bunch of different arguments. So it takes like if you look at that documentation, it's like variables, book ID and user ID are known at this particular point in time, but if they're not known, then it's okay. I think what I can do is like, can I just pass book ID along for now and then later on? No, it needs both up front. Okay. G-pose. Okay, so what I want to do here is like have that and then const remove reader and then have that function be called now at that point in time. I think. No. Maybe I was right before where we could just move that up into the, like where it's actually called. And there's the timer. Alright, go for another couple of minutes and then we'll wrap it up. I like where that code is sitting now. It's just the React hooks is complaining about where it's being called from. So it's like, invalid hook, cool. You are not allowed to do that. I mean, like, I could probably initialize the mutation there, like that. Then later on, I think we already do that with the invite form stuff, in fact. We do like, yeah, this, use. Yeah, we do it here. So invite user mutation, and then later on we call it with the correct variables. So let's go back here, and we've got use remove reader mutation. So remove reader is now this function that gets passed down, which is remove reader. What? Okay. Right up the top. Done. Okay. Now, remove reader is no longer that correct shape. It needs to be whatever shape is being returned here, which is this mutation function options. And I'm hoping in types we are able to get an access to that thing that gets returned. Use readers, use remove readers mutation. We're now calling it, and that returns. Does it have a return state on it? No. Returns this thing. It's a thing. TypeScript, insert the right type for me. No. Said TypeScript loudly and proudly. Remove reader. Remove reader. Remove it from there. Okay, so that still needs to be a function that just, I'm guessing here with remove. Options and ID are incompatible, so mutation function options. Or that like. What this is returning is either a, looks like it's returning this type here, and I'm just not sure how to get that particular type out. Is it that? I think that's the data that I get out. I'm not passing in that form. I don't really have another way of referencing that anywhere else. Where I'm calling this is inside the same component much later on. But I'm not passing it around like I'm doing here. Remove reader. Nope. Nope. Be like, what would be great is like a TypeScript feature that's like, I don't know what type you want, just put in whatever you want there. Like, guess the type. This will tell me that it's incompatible because the type down here is different. String has no, oh, fine. Types of parameters and ID are incompatible. Okay, well. Okay. The remove reader mutation options are at least that shape. So it's frustrating it doesn't have the right shape. Like type remove reader mutation is sort of like an options that is optional. Options question mark. It really doesn't seem to have anything like that. Options question mark, and then that returns void. So then this is a remove reader mutation. Remove reader mutation. Don't understand. Okay, that one should just be, oh. Like that. Book ID 1. Come on, give me a break, dudes. Hey, field remove reader does not exist on type mutations. Okay, so it's trying to do the, okay, we got all the right things hooked up. Weird that like doesn't seem to be a type. Am I hallucinating? If I use a mutation, there is a, yep, okay, options, is that really like, invite user mutation. I will need to do some more research on that front, but at least that's now looking like it's hitting the database. So let's restart that server and we will try one more time. Delete. Okay. This error occurred. Where? Reader repo. Readers.where. Okie dokie. I think we are just about done here. Refresh. Thank you. Goodbye. Book ID does not exist. Because readers here is the is the users table. All right. I think that's enough for today. I am getting quite hungry. I need to go and have some lunch, and I'm going to come back after that and look some more at this. Thank you for watching the final episode of Twist live streaming. This was designed to be a demonstration of Twist. Twist being a front-end and back-end hybrid application which uses GraphQL to communicate between the layers, and also using TypeScript to ensure the types from the server all the way up to the front end match. And that is what seems to be causing us a bit of pain right now. But overall, it really makes the flow of this a lot easier. When I changed the invite user shape on the back end, you saw that on the front end, it also needed a change. So this prevents kind of those easy mistakes that happen all the time where you'll change something on the back end, but then you forget to change it on the front end, or you will change it on the front end and forget to like go and make the change on the back end. When you use these tools in conjunction like this, you avoid those silly mistakes from happening. And that's kind of what I've been trying to demonstrate over this live coding session. Not really like a screencast series way of like small narrow snippets. It's more like this is what developing on an application like this looks like for a developer day in and day out. Thank you for watching, and I hope it's